This is Hidden Killers Week in Review.
A look back at the most prolific stories of the week.
This is a special report from True Crime Today and the Hidden Killers podcast.
I'm Tony Brueski. Thank you for joining us. It is another day of judgment for Murdaugh as he's accepted a plea deal. We're going to take you now to the South Carolina courthouse where that sentencing is taking place, as well as victim impact statements. They'll be read or stated directly to Murdaugh from those that had been wronged by him due to his financial crimes against them. Let's go there right now.
Back in session. Thank you. You may be seated.
Mr. Waters.
Your Honor, we had a victim arrive. She was at work and arrived during Mr. Murdaugh's presentation to the court, and we would ask him, the defense, I believe, has agreed to let her address the court very quickly.
No objection, Your Honor.
All right. Yes.
Good afternoon. I want to thank everybody for just,
Does the mic work, or you're not speaking into it?
Yes.
Speak a little loud.
Good afternoon. I just want to thank everybody for giving me this chance. You Judge Newman. I want to address Mr. Murdaugh. Mr. Murdaugh, it's been years since my mother, Blondell Gary, had passed in an ambulance accident on Old Sheldon Church Road. When he took the case, I trusted you. I really trusted you, like a lot. Like I had a lot of faith in you, because my friend Miss P, she had told me about you, and so I entrusted you. But you know what? Today, I thank God. You know, God gave me this time just to tell you that I forgive you. I forgive you. And I hope and pray that you would look to him and ask him truly in your heart to forgive you of everything that you have done, all of your sins, because what you did to all of the families is just so wrong. It's wrong. So just ask him, just ask him to forgive you. I forgive you. Okay? Just know that I do. Thank you. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Your Honor, that would be the state's presentation. I would just say in closing that I think Your Honor just got a taste of what all these victims have gotten. And I think that he talked about these special recollections. It's good to know he has recollections about some things. But he's good. He can look people in the eye. But we've seen it all before. We saw it for 2 days at the murder trial. We saw it in Dave Owen's car. And all of these victims have seen it over and over again in their interactions with him and in his office. But even as we heard that entire soliloquy, even now, his only concern, the main thing he was concerned about, was how he felt others perceived him, his perception in the mind of others. And I'm just closed with saying what I said to you right before sentencing in the murder trial. That when he sat there and looked all these victims in the eye, it was the same thing that he had done when he stole from them. It's the same thing that he's done in his interactions with police. And the reality is that not one single person who thought they knew this man, and there were so many who thought they did, not one single person knew who he really was. And Your Honor, it's time for, at least in these proceedings, respectfully, for the system to be done with him, and we would ask you to accept the 27 years. Thank you.
Your Honor, we have nothing further to say except we urge you to adopt the Attorney General's position on accepting the negotiated plea.
Yes, sir. Where there's a negotiated sentence, as I stated earlier, either the court accepts the guilty plea and impose the exact sentence that the parties have negotiated, or the court will not accept the guilty plea. We've now spent 2 days listening to the recitation by the state and the defense, and I will accept the negotiated sentence and accept the guilty plea. Mr. Murdaugh, if you'll come around for sentencing. It was September of 2021 when the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court assigned me to preside over the pending investigations involving the various offenses that you are being investigated for, initially including these financial crimes and the murder cases. And I have lived with this case now for over 2 years, and I have 34 days left before active retirement, and after imposing this sentence, your life will continue. I will turn the page and leave you behind. You're quite an enigma, a person that many of us thought we knew. And as I stated earlier, I can only recall you as being a fun-loving, happy person. I've never seen you sad. I've never seen you being anything other than a friendly, caring person. And it's so disappointing to see you again in this setting. I believe the last time we saw each other and you were not in jail was at a conference when you were poolside having a good time. And as it turns out, that was a couple of months after the passing of your wife and son. But you were having a good time, made nothing of it, and then the Labor Day weekend events occurred, and next thing I know, I'm assigned to preside over all of your matters. Not only your matters, but others as well. And we started out with over 100 charges, indictments against various folks, and we've whittled that down to just a handful outstanding. And I'm happy to turn the page and turn, not turn the remnants over to anyone else, but to certainly turn over anything pending against you to someone else. It's been said that these are white-collar offenses. I've never had that distinction. I've never thought of it that way. I've looked at criminal offenses as criminal offenses. You know, 3 property crimes in South Carolina is you can get 10 years in prison. People have gotten 10 years for shoplifting, third offense. I've sent people into retirement for committing criminal offenses over and over and over again. But I've never thought of it as being a white-collar offense. Having had employees do embezzlement, church secretaries stole money, preachers stolen money, many offenses. But I never draw a distinction between a violent crime and other crimes. Certainly the law makes a distinction, and many violent crimes are non-parole offenses. The plea I'm accepting with you, you must serve 85% of the time. The parties have indicated that they are the victims, to the extent that they can be called victims. That's my preferred term for the group of people who have been preyed upon or victimized. They've all indicated that they would like for the court to accept the negotiated sentence. It is a stern sentence. The question was asked, what kind of animal are you? You're an enigmatic person. I don't know that you understand yourself. What comes to mind is a young man that I sentenced to death penalty for killing a police officer and setting his body on fire. And though personally I was opposed to capital punishment, he was sentenced to death. And in writing up that sentence report, I concluded that he was heartless. He was just empty. And when I see you and I listen to you and I reflect on all that I've seen since being appointed, assigned to these cases, you come closest to that young man. Being empty, I don't see anything. I tried to reach you at sentencing in the other case. I've listened to you here today, and I don't see anything there. Hopefully something will emerge within your spirit, within your soul. Certainly, being a person of your age and intelligence and experience, you have a lot to offer to the people that you encounter on a daily basis in the institution, and I think it's admirable that you've indicated that you will help them and continue to try to do good by them. You'll certainly have a lot of opportunity to do that. You know, as we look at it, all of us, you know, none of us are perfect. Many of us do things that we shouldn't do. It's just unimaginable to me that you have done some of the things that you've done, and whether it's you or someone you become upon using drugs or through the process of just committing the crimes over and over the period of years. I don't know. I don't know. I don't even know who I'm speaking to now. But being a person of power and influence, and the question is raised of what type of character do you have? a person who would prey upon folks who are vulnerable and who are of a lower perceived estate than you, how you would prey upon those people who you say you love, and you would capitalize on a disparity of what you have versus what they had and what they need and what they desired. In my years, I know of no greater joy as a lawyer that I've had during my 47 years as a lawyer than the joy of having a satisfied client, of delivering good results for a client and experiencing that joy with them. I can think of no greater joy than I've experienced in being able to deliver on behalf of a client. And I'm sure you've experienced that joy as well until you decided that the only joy you're concerned about was your own. I take no joy at all in imposing this sentence, but it is what it is. And you'll have to suffer the consequences of your acts, continue to suffer the consequences, and hopefully some good will come out of you as you move forward. There are a number of counts here, a number of indictments, and you'll get an individual sentence as to each one. On indictment GS 4727, for money laundering, the sentence is 20 years. Obtaining signature of property by false pretenses, the sentence is 10 years. The second count of obtaining property by false pretenses, count 7, 10 years. A breach of trust with fraudulent intent, value more than $10,000, the sentence is 10 years. Another, obtaining property by false pretenses, count an indictment 4730, count 4, sentence is 10 years. Money laundering on indictment, same indictment, count 5, sentence is 20 years. Money laundering, count 8 of that indictment, the sentence is 20 years. Breach of trust with fraudulent intent, an indictment number 32, count 1, sentence is 5 years. Money laundering under indictment number 33, count 2, the sentence is 20 years. Money laundering under indictment 34, count 2, the sentence is 20 years. Forgery, value $10,000 or more under indictment 35, count 5, the sentence is 10 years. Computer crimes under indictment 36, the sentence is 5 years. Breach of trust with fraudulent intent under indictment ending in 37, the sentence is 10 years. All those sentences will run concurrent with each other. Money laundering under indictment ending in 38, count 2, the sentence is 7 years consecutive. to sentences previously stated. Under indictment 4701, breach of trust with fraudulent intent, the sentence is 10 years concurrent. Breach of trust, fraudulent intent under indictment ending in 02, count 1, sentence is 10 years. Under indictment ending in 10, count 1, sentence is 5 years concurrent. Money laundering in indictment ending in 23, count 3, the sentence is 20 years. Under indictment ending 24, obtaining goods under false pretenses, sentence is 10 years. Willful intent to evade or defeat payment of taxes under indictment 34, sentences 5 years concurrent. You have one 20-year sentence and a consecutive 7-year sentence for a total sentence of 27 years. Most of the offenses pled to are serious offenses under the law, subjects you to the 3 strikes law. You are given credit for time served pursuant to section 241340 to be calculated by the South Carolina Department of Corrections. I think that completes the sentence. Anything further regarding this sentence?
Your Honor, just for clarification, and I think the sentencing sheets reflect this, but he's got all those sentences concurrent for 20, yes. And then there's one 7-year consecutive sentence. So he's got a 27-year sentence, 85% parole eligible, max out.
Yes.
Right.
And it's reflected on the sentencing sheet.
Yes, sir.
Any comment about that, Mr. Waters or Mr.?
That is correct, Your Honor. There's 20 years at 85% and then a 7 at 85%. And again, those are no parole offenses, meaning got to do 85%.
Right.
Or more, depending on how he behaves.
And that's the sentence of the court. Mr. Murdaugh, any final comments?
No, sir. I will just reiterate what I did say to all of you.
Thank you, Your Honor.
All right.
Thank
you, Your Honor, and enjoy being with you.
Yes, sir. Very well. Enjoyed being with you as well.
You're not on the road.
All right.
Thank you, Judge.
Very good. Thank you all for a job well done.
We'll be ready to go as soon as John Monk gets here.
Watch out. Watch yourself, John. There's a curb right there.
Will you stop taking pictures and come on? We're waiting on you. Okay, fuck him.
All right. So do you have a statement?
Only statement we'd have is that Alex is satisfied to get this behind him. It's a substantial sentence. He understands that. And he looks forward to a hearing on our motion to set aside his murder convictions based on jury tampering. And before you ask me, no judge has been appointed. This is the Supreme Court. We don't know when they'll appoint a judge, and we don't know when the hearing is going to be. So let me save you those questions. Jim?
Obviously Alec had a lot to say in court today, and he took full advantage of the opportunity. And so, I don't have anything more to add.
Any questions?
With this sentence alone, do you expect Alec to spend the rest of his life in prison?
No. With this sentence, he will be eligible to be released and max out at like 75 and a half. He's 55 now, and he gets credit for time served. He's already challenged me to a golf game. I'll be 86, so he'll probably win if I live that long. But no, I tell you, Alec is committed to getting out. One thing that came, I don't want to count our chickens before the eggs hatch, but a lot of the lawyers in there didn't express a lot of confidence that he was going to have to do 2 life sentences without parole. So,
I mean, that was with Jeff going to jail for the wiretapping. Do you think it's going to help with your motion for new trial?
We don't know anything about any of the facts involving that case, so we can't. We're not going to. And it's a pending case. We're not going to comment on that.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
With your confidence that he's going to have his murder vacated, who are you investigating or trying to
Okay, could you say that again? I didn't catch it all.
No, all I was asking is, have you been having any investigations on, do you think, if you're going to be looking to retry these murder convictions, are you and your team having any investigations about who you would be pointing the finger at as far as a killer?
Yes.
Who are you looking at?
Not going to tell you. Because we're still investigating it. And first of all, we got to get a new trial. I mean, you're going to black cat me here. We need to go ahead and deal with the jury tampering issue, get a new trial, and then that would be a valid question.
What happens now with restitution for the victims' families?
Well, most of these folks have already gotten restitution, either from the law firm or insurance companies.
The prosecutor didn't seem too convinced that Alex was being sincere in his comments. How sincere do you think he was?
I mean, it's the Alec that I've spoken to since September of 2021. Me immediately expressed remorse then, and he expressed remorse today.
And we met him when Paul was charged with the boat case, and we both spent a lot of time with him and Maggie and Paul. I mean, that's the Alex before he was ever charged, before he was ever accused. I mean, he's always been, when I say straight up, pretty honest with us about.
But he is clean today, and he's been clean for over 800 days. And believe it or not, it's pretty easy to get drugs in prison, and so he's proud of that accomplishment.
Mr. Murdaugh said that he was planning to plead guilty from day one, but it took until 2 weeks before we were supposed to have the first trial to actually get the ball rolling.
There's one, blame us, because we've got to investigate, and we have to make motions, we have to go through this process. 2, he as he said, he didn't get a real plea offer till, 3 weeks ago?
Yeah, I mean, early November.
You plead guilty, you get life without parole. That was the offer. And then when we finally got ready to try this case, the Attorney General's office became more reasonable, and we went back and forth and ended up at 27 years.
The state seems to think that he's not going to be able to get out of prison with this sentence, and you don't seem to agree.
Well, this sentence, 85% of 27 years, y'all can do the math. I mean, that...
He'd be 75, 76 years old.
Yeah, so...
I'm going to be 75 next month.
We're not sure he's going to make it, but, he
I
might.
don't feel like I'm going to die.
So, anyway.
You guys said you guys were going back and forth with the negotiated sentence. What were you guys asking for?
We're not going to, those are negotiations. We're not going to get into that. But something less than 27, and they were asking for something more than 27. Anything else? What?
One of the lawyers of victims in the case mentioned that he believes there's still some of the $8 million that was stolen that wasn't all used on drugs. What do you say to that? Do you have any doubt in your mind that all of that money is gone?
I believe in Santa Claus. I mean, there's no money there. He wouldn't be borrowing money from his law partners, from his brother, from everybody. And, if there's money there for him, I mean, that's...
The whole pattern of his borrowing and spending would indicate he was spending the money on something, we believe drugs. And if you look at the checks just written to Eddie Smith and other people we know he bought drugs from, it's almost $5 million of money that was written either drug dealer or written to drug dealers. And and the rest was spent on paying back loan. I mean, look, if you go through it, there's no extra money there. Anything else?
Thank you.
Have a great day.
See you when we see you.
Good afternoon, everyone. So, in September 21, the chapter opened, and today the chapter closed. The Satterfield case was the case that broke the financial crimes wide open, and I think the resources that SLED allocated made it go a long way to bring the murder charges, and everything kind of came together. And today, it's ironic, but the Satterfield case is what caused the plea of guilt to happen. This case was supposed to go to trial yesterday, and like my partner says, until your shoulders are pinned to the mat, you're not going to give up. And this case was going to go to trial. I don't think that Judge Newman was going to recuse himself. I don't think he was going to change the venue, and pressure breaks pipes, and that's what caused Alex to plea. I meant every word that I said today. I think that he's a very, very dangerous, evil man. I got up and I left when he was on his filibuster, because I felt that what he was doing was denigrating the victims, telling them that he loved them, and regaling in stories. This was nothing but a PR stunt for him. If the murder case somehow gets reversed, that he could try to reshape his image. He didn't do a good job of it in the murder case during the murder trial. But it's a sad day. Justin Bamberg was correct. As a lawyer, I hate this. I hate that it happened. There's former Attorney General Charlie Condon. He knows as a lawyer, it sets us back years when something like this happens. And I'm just happy for the Satterfield family that it's over with, the Plyler family, Jordan Jenks, Sandra Manning, and Blake Hodges that we represent, and Melvick Edwards. I agree with the sentence. I think it was a just sentence. It's a long sentence. I agree with what Judge Newman said, that we shouldn't differentiate between white-collar and blue-collar crimes. It's all crimes. But it is a long sentence. And, I think Alex is never going to see the light of day, whether he dies in state prison or he comes out of state prison and has to go to federal prison. The Labor Day shooting charges are still out there. And, it's a good day for justice. When Ronnie and I argued the bond hearing in October 21, we said that he's got to get a full cup of justice and deliver it to him and make him get that cup just like everybody else. And the cup of justice kind of took off on another tangent. But that's what Alex got today. He was treated just like everybody else. So I'm very satisfied. Ronnie, you have anything you want to add?
No, I said it in the courtroom. It's the same point. This is Brian Harriet. He's not a victim. Victims are folks who had something bad happen to them. He was prey. He was hunted. He and other victims of Alex Murdaugh, he targeted the weak and the vulnerable. He took advantage of that. He saw justice finally today. To Eric's point, you got to pin this guy to the mat before you finally get an admission of that which cannot be denied. So we're happy today that he finally admitted that which was impossible to deny, that he stole all of that money.
What sentence would you have liked to have seen?
Look, I trust Creighton Waters and his team. I trust Judge Newman. It is a watershed verdict in a case like this, or a sentence in a case like this. So would more have been better? Sure. But I think 27 years, given these crimes, is an appropriate sentence.
I worked with Creighton Waters for about the past month, and I can tell you this, that Creighton came to me about a month ago and said, would you object if the sentence was 27 to 30 years? He said, Harpootlian is never going to take it, but we have to. Judge Newman wants us to explore whether we can get a resolution. In all cases, there's always a time when you explore a resolution. Civil cases, it's a mediation, or before you go to the courthouse, you settle. And he said, would you have an objection to a 27 to 30 year sentence? And I did the math. He's 54 years old. I know how many years somebody lives in maximum security. I knew that Judge Gergel had a backstop sentence that's coming in a couple months for the federal crimes he pled guilty to, plus there's the Labor Day shooting, plus if the murder charges stick. So he said, I said, no, I don't have an objection. I talked to the clients, and no one's said, no, we want him in life. But the point is that Harpootlian, he said, would never agree. And they did not. They did not want Alex to plead to anything more than 14 to 15 years. And, you know, God bless the Attorney General, Alan Wilson, and my hero, Creighton Wooders. They never yielded. They never went below 27 years. So I'm real proud of the state. I'm proud of that sentence.
There was a statement you made inside where you said there's 22 charges, but he's really guilty of 101. I think that was very impactful to many people from home. What do you have to say about that? Well, we know he's guilty, but there was a reason why you put that in your speech.
It leaves out some of the victims that were part of those charges.
May I ask that you step back up there?
Sorry.
And speak to all the cameras. Thank you, sir.
It leaves out a lot of the victims who were part of those 102 charges that he didn't plead guilty to. But they had their money taken. They were lied to. They just agreed, the state agreed on a compromise. Compromise, by the way, is not a dirty word in our society. It's a good word. Used to be a real good word until Washington made it a bad word. But they compromised and they went with the 20 charges that they really wanted to. Obviously, Randy's charges was an offer plea, which is a little bit different. But for me, he was guilty of everything. And it goes beyond just taking money. As I said, Ronnie and I have had a lot of phone calls from victims who had clients who had good personal injury cases that Alex took their case and never filed it on time, where there was a statute of limitations that ran. We didn't take the case because sometimes the damages were maybe $10,000, and when you prosecute a legal malpractice case, you need an expert witness, and they're very expensive. Lawyers charge money to testify against other lawyers, so it was impractical to bring. But he caused carnage, not only in stealing people's money, but stealing their cases, where if they got a recovery, they would be able to have medical treatment for the rest of their lives.
As far as restitution goes, Mr. Harpootlian says most of the victims have been made whole through the bank and through other means. Have your clients been made whole?
Well, it depends on how you define been made whole. Our clients had $4.3 million stolen from them. We've recovered in excess of $7.5 million. So you would look at that and say, yeah, you've been made whole. The value of those claims, though, is a multiple of that. In other words, if we tried that case to a jury, I would expect a jury to give us $10, $15, $20 million. So not against the value of the case, no.
Because there's an unfair trade practices claim under South Carolina law. If a defendant commits multiple of these type acts, if there's a pattern, which there is, obviously, with all the different theft, you get triple your damages plus your attorney's fees. Plus there's a loss of interest component. If the Satterfield boys had gotten their money in 2019, they would have been able to invest that money conservatively in one of the best stock markets that existed from 2019 to the end of COVID. And they could have made more money on that money. So we would have put up additional damages. The Plyler sisters have also recovered money. Jordan Jenks has recovered money. All of our clients have recovered money, but it's how you define it to say make it whole. But I meant it when I said it. When Harpootlian initially, for a long time, was trying to tell us that we need to go somewhere else to other people to get our money and not from Alex. And then, you know, he gave the confession of judgment, which is still alive and well, which was the basis of one of the guilty charges. And he tried to vacate it and get out from under it a year after he gave it.
But Raphael, I would be remiss if I didn't say the law firm did dig deep into their personal pockets to restore a lot of that money to a lot of those victims. That wasn't our case. We got it from other sources. But it is true that the law firm did step up to the bar and make a lot of those people whole.
When the saying goes, you can't get blood from a turnip, Griffin says Alec doesn't have any more money.
Don't believe it.
Where would the money come from?
Don't believe it. There's going to come a time where books are written I think there's going to come a time when people that have protected Alex for so long, whether it's Corey Fleming who's going to have to talk, whether it's Russell Lafitte. Remember, Russell's doing 84 months. Corey's going to end up doing close to 9-10 years. Maybe somebody's going to talk. Alex himself on a federal level to take that plea has to go under a polygraph test, and there's no limitation on the questions. So I'm sure they're going to ask him a ton of questions, and somebody may come clean with a conscience who's holding money for Alex. I believe some of it's buried in cash because he gave Cousin Eddie cashier's checks to cash. But I also believe there's a lot of land partnerships where he held an interest that wasn't maybe defined on paper.
Attorney Bland, when Alex was addressing the court and he started speaking about Buster and how Buster is being, with the media, portraying Buster, you got up and walked out. What was the reason?
Because that had nothing to do with it. Again, that's the defense complaining about the media, podcasters, pretrial publicity. They created as much of it themselves. There isn't a microphone or a camera that Dick Harpootlian won't go in front of. And he busted on podcasters, and I am a podcaster, and right after the murder trial, his partner starts a podcast. So it's the pot calling the kettle black all the time.
What's the latest on the Stephen Smith case, and do you believe that Murdaugh needs to be investigated?
I think everybody needs to be investigated. The latest is I spoke to Chief Keel, who's the head of our state law enforcement division, and he said this is a very much active investigation, and there's a lot of issues that his agents are going to address with about 6 different people. This investigation slowed down, obviously, because of the machinations of the new jury trial and then trying to get out from underneath the Satterfield trial. But do I think the Murdaughs need to be investigated? I think everybody does. And the one question that needed to be asked of Buster was, do you have any knowledge of what happened to Stephen Smith? Not whether you had a relationship with him and not whether you killed him, because we have no knowledge of that. But we do believe that he may have knowledge of what happened to Stephen Smith.
But I will add, it remains a case that we are aware of no credible evidence that connects any Murdaugh to Stephen Smith's death. So as we know it today, there is no evidence of which we are aware. If we were aware of it, we'd be the first ones to tell you. I mean, we're obviously no fans of the Murdaughs, but there is no evidence we've come into contact with that would suggest there's a connection.
Right.
Not to belabor the point, but how much more money does Alec Murdaugh owe your client?
He owes $4.3 million
Plus-
by a confession of judgment.
Plus post-judgment interest that clicks every day by statute.
Maybe one day he'll sell a book right and come up with the money. So it's good to have a judgment. We'll wait and see what happens.
He can if there's unless he gets out from underneath the murder convictions. The Slayer statute says he can't profit off that. But if somehow he gets out under the murder conviction and writes a book or does a movie or something, we have a judgment that's good for 10 years under South Carolina law. Ginger,
Okay.
you have anything you want to say, Ginger?
I just want to say that we're glad today that this should be the final chapter for our family, and that we can get back to our normal, low keel, easygoing, slow way of life that we enjoy, and we're ready to get back to that type of lifestyle that we enjoy.
How do you think Gloria would have responded to hearing Tony say he forgives Alec Murdaugh?
I think that she's in heaven smiling down on all of us, and we think we are God-believing people, and we believe that forgiveness is part of what we are expected as God-believing people. So we think Gloria is proud of all of us.
Tony just shows the kind of character that his mama was.
Yes.
That's the same kind of person she was.
Before I leave, I want to thank the media. I participated with my co-host Mandy Matney at the School of Journalism a couple weeks ago, and everybody was saying, are you scared of the media or whatever? No, I think the media are our friends. I think if, I respect the media, and the media has respected me throughout this process. If you're honest with the media, I think they're going to do good reporting. And I think the media was instrumental in putting pressure on Alex Murdaugh, in writing these stories, in doing the news programs. He couldn't outrun them. There wasn't really one single positive program or anything. Nobody came forward. And I got to really applaud the media. I think you guys did a really good job. You didn't sensationalize it like Harpootlian tried to say. It was honest and accurate reporting. And I thank you for it, and so do our clients.
And I'd like to say also thank you to Eric and Ronnie and the U.S. Attorney General's office, because they put a lot of hard work into this. Amen. Thank you all, too.
All right, y'all give me the good sign. Everybody's ready. Everybody ready? All right, well, this has obviously been a very great day, I think, for justice in South Carolina. Obviously, Alec Murdaugh has pled guilty to these financial offenses from the state grand jury, and he's been sentenced to a sentence of 27 years of 85% time. This was something that the state agreed to for a number of reasons. First of all, again, a sentence that I think Judge Newman called very stern. I don't think anyone, as I said in court, state or federal, has seen a sentence like that for charges of this nature. But additionally, we're able to save these victims, save these communities the expense of trial after trial, and ultimately get to tell the entire story of how Alec Murdaugh abused the judicial system, how he made use of his power and his influence and this law license to do so. And I think that's a big important point of this today as well, is to have that exposed, have that addressed in state court where it belongs, and have the state court system speak on it and then begin its own process of healing and improving from the experiences that this case has brought to us. I want to thank, of course, the Attorney General, Alan Wilson, who's been instrumental and in leadership in this case from the beginning, and also my partners at SLED, my state grand jury team. You see a couple of them standing right here. I've got Johnny James and Carson Burney, who are my two financial white-collar guys who do such a great job, among so many others at SLED and among the state grand jury staff. And they've really been instrumental in all of this. And then I also want to thank, as I did in court, the victims, and particularly those initial victims and their attorneys who came forward. Some of them were unrepresented at the time, but they really showed a lot of courage in this case early on. It's really hard to conceive of it now that we're kind of on the other side of this part of the tale. But at the beginning, there was a lot of difficult feelings as to whether or not anything would ever be done, and we're happy that this result that today has shown that it will be. So I'll take a couple of questions if anybody has any.
What more
Yep.
restitution?
You had a pretty clear path to 3 strikes. Why didn't you go ahead and go with that, considering you already sort of had it all laid out as you had talked about?
Well, again, we got 27 years at 85%. In our judgment, that is practically a life sentence. And again, we're talking about, what Colleton endured. That's a small county. They had to endure an incredible expense. And I think you heard Justin Bamberg talk about that all of these smaller counties, Allendale, Hampton, Bamberg, would have to pay for trial after trial after trial. And that's not a good use of judicial resources, not only for the judicial resources in those counties, and to have all those neighbors and friends of those victims have to essentially foot the bill for those trials, but it's not a good use of court time or really time for SLED and the Attorney General's office. As I said in court today, and I loved Justin Bamberg's slay the dragon analogy, we have a lot of other dragons to slay. We had a big announcement last week on some of our cases involving some of the issues at SCDC, some of the corruption there. We even announced where a child had been victimized in real time through use of a contraband cell phone. Another big focus at state grand jury is fentanyl trafficking, which is killing our citizens right and left. So if we can today put Alec Murdaugh in prison, where he also waives his appeals, waives his PCR, and provide that level of certainty and finality, and be able then to move on to new things with a certainty that he's going to be in prison for the rest of his life, regardless of what happens with the murders. And let's be clear, he's got 2 life sentences for murder, and those aren't going away. We're going to litigate that, and if we, for some reason, some small chance we have to retry it, we'll do that as well. But this ultimately provides the best result when all those factors are put together. Yes, sir.
Have all of his victims been made whole? If not, what happens then?
So we deferred a restitutionary figure, and the way I phrased it today is I wouldn't say anyone has been made whole. What I did say today is that in many instances the law firm paid the victims the net amount of what Alec had stolen. But that does not address any other claims that people may have. And so again, the state's job is to not get involved with that. That's for the civil side of things. What our job is to ensure that there's kind of an accountability for that net result. So for all those victims that were addressed today, there has at least been some payment made, but I'm never going to say that any of these victims who had their trust betrayed, who maybe had their money stolen back in 2011 and didn't get it back till last year, I will never say that anyone was made whole. The firm did cooperate and made an effort, again, to pay those net results back. They also were very cooperative in the investigation. The bank, Palmetto State Bank as well, was very cooperative in the investigation and made a lot of documents. And so both of those institutions, I think, were harmed by the actions of Alec. But ultimately, whether or not anyone could ever be made whole in a situation like this, I don't think that's the appropriate term to use.
Is there a chance you'll have to retry him? So you had a complex case with this financial crimes case, and you had
You're right.
a complex case with the murderer. Can you express just how complex it really was? What did your office do? How many people? How many hours? I mean, it just seems like a lot.
Right. Well, the one thing about the job that I'm lucky enough to have as chief attorney of the state grand jury, and I have this team that we've constructed, is that's our stock and trade, is to focus on complex cases, and that's why this case ultimately came to us, and that's why it was well suited. We have a long history of doing complex narcotics trafficking cases, which we again address those looking for the traffickers, looking for those larger conspiracies. We have a lot of experience in public corruption, a lot of experience at complex financial. So while it was a lot of work, it's the kind of thing that we're used to doing, and we also have develop the expertise and the resources to be able to take those deep dives into cases like this. And so ultimately, yes, was it a lot of work, but it's what the state grand jury was constructed to do, and ultimately I think you see the results of that.
Is there a chance?
Go ahead.
You're going to have to retry him, and then are you going to be that guy?
Well, I mean, there's been a motion filed. I'm not going to comment on any pending motion. We'll obviously litigate that motion, and then whatever happens after that, we'll address it at that time. Yeah.
Alex was talking. He said that by pleading guilty today, it made them look at him for all of the murder crimes instead of having fled, and he called out the AG's office for not looking at other people during the murders. What do you have to say to that?
I have to say that we presented our case in front of jurors in Colleton County, and they came to that result, and I think that result speaks for itself. Yes. Well, I don't think there was a holdup. I think that Alex said what he wants to say, but the real reality of what happened was that having Judge Newman set the trial date for this week and us on the state side moving to try this case, that ultimately forced him to a realization that he was going to have to take a result far worse than he ever wanted. So that really was what drove the ship. You can take Alec for what he said, but what really drove the ship was that we were prepared to try the case this week, and that forced him into the decision that he made here today. Yeah.
Do you think Alec Murdaugh has any remorse for the financial crimes he admitted to today?
I'll let y'all be the judge of that.
Can you tell us how the right side shooting event was not wrapped up into these?
Sure. So this was, again, we were in trial for, preparing for trial this week for state grand jury matters. And state grand jury is different, as I just explained. It operates kind of on its own docket. So when this plea deal started to develop, I made it very clear that we were not going to blend things together. This was state grand jury and state grand jury only, and so those were the only charges that we resolved. It was the jurisdictional basis that we were here in court for. And I'll take just a couple more.
What happens next with those charges? Do you plan to press forward with them, or are they going to hang out there?
Well, again, we'll cross that bridge when we get there. They're pending charges, so I'm not going to comment any further on that.
What's next?
What's next? Well, what's next is that obviously we have to litigate the juror motion, which we will do so whenever that is set. And again, we will start focusing on other priorities of the state grand jury. And I mentioned a couple of those. We've developed a partnership with SCDC to try to fight the very difficult problems of corruption and contraband there. I'd urge y'all to go back and look at the press conference we had last week, and one particular example in which a child was molested in real time by an inmate directing that with use of a contraband cell phone and an accomplice on the outside. Something that, again, those are the allegations there that I think need to be addressed. Another focus of the state grand jury is fentanyl trafficking, and then there's always corruption cases and other complex white-collar cases that we're working on. But this saga is not over. We still have charges pending against Russell Lafitte, and those, obviously, we will pursue aggressively as well.
Speaking of the roadside shooting, will you guys handle that, or will that be somebody else?
The roadside shooting we will handle, and again, I don't want to comment any further because those are pending. All right, last one. Who gets it? Nobody? All right, thank y'all. Bye.
This has been a special report from True Crime Today and the Hidden Killers podcast.